Hi folks, Igor here. How's everybody doing? I have an announcement. I am going to stop this podcast. I've done it for a year. I've really enjoyed it, but its goal was to increase awareness of Longboat's music. And, everybody and their brother has a podcast. I just thought this would gain some sort of traction, but I do have to tell you that not only has it not gained traction, but the audience has gone down to a very, very bare minimum. And it just seems that my efforts would probably be used in other directions. If you have been listening to this podcast for a while, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate your involvement. But here's one indicator that of my just enduring unpopularity is that in all of this time, I have not gotten one email from anybody. And so, but that's me. That's kind of par for the course. And I know that other people go through this, and a lot of people go through this and are suddenly, by some odd circumstance, through some outrageous coincidence or blind bit of luck, they are suddenly known quantities, and people write about them and people listen to them. The only goal for this whole thing was for people to listen. Once they decided that there was an actual human being who had a set of reasoning and processes and philosophies to go with the music. And that, I've always said that people are not interested in process, and I believe this kind of proves it. So yeah, I've got no moves other than this, and I've thoroughly enjoyed talking about the music of Longboat. It's especially in the older tunes, it's revived songs that I haven't really listened to or thought about for several years. I do listen to my music, as uncool as that is. I listen to my music and I enjoy it, because all of the doubt and all of the regret and all of the what I think is sort of inferior musical elements, those disappear before you record. And you record, and it is a 99.9% wonderful experience. And that is why I continue to record. This last album was every bit as wonderful and magical as the albums before. And the first album, that's kind of what got me hooked. It was just a wonderful, super positive experience that I did not want to stop. So that's, of course, that's one of my motivations for making lots of albums. Now, what are the goals for Longboat? Well, maybe I mentioned this, but I just recorded my 24th album. There are two albums that have yet to be released: the 20th album and the 23rd album. That's what the original order was supposed to be. The 20th album is called Out of Place, and the 23rd album is basically Blue Volume 2. But before those come out, there will be the album that I recorded just last month, and called A Short Walk to the Capitol, about some of the background contributing factors to the January 6th insurrection in Washington, D.C. And, of course, through the lens of current politics, it seems kind of like a quieter, simpler time. But, I wrote it in, February it didn't exist. In March it did, and I worked tirelessly to refine it and to get it in some sort of for it to coalesce around some sort of narrative. And yes, I believe it did, and all under the sort of blanket of dark electro funk. So that's coming up in August. I've just sent it off to the manufacturer. It'll be done in like a couple of weeks. And other than that, I am writing. I've got 2 albums that I'm going to record about the Cold War in September, and I have 2 albums that I'm working on for next year. And that's just 2 preliminary albums. So, who knows how many I'm going to end up with by the end of the year. But the goal, and I realize how ridiculous this sounds. What with Longboat being so incredibly unpopular, and not, unpopular in the neutral sense, in the fact that it lacks popularity, not hated and reviled. If I was hated and reviled, boy, I wouldn't have any problem finding fans. But yeah, I am just unpopular. The music's ignored, and it's always very frustrating to witness. But my goal, and maybe I've said it here, is to make 50 albums and then quit. That is my goal. It's not making, things, you can revise things. The goal for this podcast was to feature every single Longboat song recorded. And that includes tracks from the Seven Hills albums, the ones that were just mostly dialogue, people talking. I was going to do all that, but it just seems to make more sense to just pack it in. And so what I'm going to do is I will take down all the previous episodes. There's nothing more sad than an abandoned podcast, wouldn't you say? So I am going to take down everything from YouTube, and eventually I'll give Anchor a couple of weeks. Anchor is the platform that it makes the podcast available to Spotify and iTunes and however all the other podcasting entities. And yes, it's an oversaturated industry. I realize that there are a lot of people who have good production and just horrible content. My sort of nightmare scenario of listening to a podcast is just having people telling in jokes and giggling. And in my experience, that is a lot of the podcast world. And then, of course, there are people who have really good and articulate things to say, who have like bad equipment and poor sound quality. I don't know how this one rates. I just know that I know that there's electronic interference, and there's nothing I can do about that. It's because there are just cell phone towers everywhere here in Belltown. I turn off my phone, but I have to run a cord a cable that is about 40 feet long from the computer to the bedroom, where at least it's quieter than being in the main room. So, but with that said, if you found the occasional electronic interference in my podcasts to be cringeworthy, or just if it made the whole thing inaudible, I am sorry. I really am. If there is a if Longboat should happen to become popular, I would consider doing this again, and this time starting over. I realize that the first couple of episodes are kind of rough. I do say a lot, and I was really hoping to stop doing that, but it seems that I still do it. And for that, I apologize too. And, I just wanted to, this was just presenting my music in the way that creators do. There are some points that I felt like I should have made, and other points that I did make that I probably shouldn't have. Around the election, I got very, very political because I felt that it was very important to make sure that Donald Trump wasn't in office anymore. And that kind of happened, didn't it? But there's a large swath of the American public who believes that isn't the case. That is not the reality that they prefer. But anyhow, that's the thing about being human. You can pick a reality that you prefer, and my reality was believing that the music of Longboat had appeal. Now, I do still have a publicist, and I have great faith in him. He seems to get very. He gets kind of acclaim for, and he is able to successfully promote the bands that he works with. But not Longboat yet. But his one saving grace is that he has a lot of releases to work with. And I don't think he's ever been in this kind of situation where he has shorter lead times, because most of the bands that he works with are they put things out once every, say, 2 years, and that's a healthy indie band production cycle. You spend a year writing songs for an album, and I'm keeping in mind that everybody in the band has to work. Nobody's a professional musician. Nobody, it's not like Mountain Goat's level of success for an indie band. So, that's reasonable. 1 year, and then you record it, and then you tour. And you tour when you can, so you don't lose your job. If you're smart about it, then that's kind of how things work. But yeah, speaking of touring, there was nothing more that I would like to do than to take Longboat's music on the road. But it's kind of like, if you're going to get two people there, if you're going to just serenade two people, even if you're an opening band, serenading two people, serenading five people. It's not that my ego can't take that. It's just that I feel like my music has a wider appeal, and it's just a matter of honing in on where that lies. And of course, that's what my publicist tells me too. But he's going to have a lot of albums to work with. I am still going to just release music at a furious pace. I've been doing song starts over the last week or so, and yeah, it's a fire hose. It just happens. There are all kinds of styles, all kinds of genres, weird dance stuff, very simple, straightforward stuff. Funk rock, folk, and it's folk music, and sometimes even country music. And I've had these kind of pet projects that I've been nursing along, I do want to do an entire album of revenge ballads, because I'm Slavic. The Slavs are really big into revenge. It's part of my genetic makeup. So yeah, let's do that. And it may or may not get done. Like I said, I was expecting to do every single Longboat song on this podcast, but now we just stop here. This is the end of the journey for now. And I just want to thank you for listening this far, or listening at all. But I'm very. This is kind of a sad moment, but it's kind of got to be done, because otherwise it's just an exercise in futility. And I blame no one for this. Maybe I can blame my own paltry songwriting skills and for writing pop music that is so singularly unpopular. But yeah, if you have enjoyed this, then thank you, and we'll just leave it at that. And let me just conclude by saying, as I always do, if you haven't liked these tracks, I have others. Goodbye and thank you.